Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, Palm Springs Honeymoon. In the last few days, we've been at a wedding. Elvis and Priscilla. And we've seen them get hitched, and they've gotten back on the plane, and they've headed back to Palm Springs to begin their honeymoon. All done in less than a day. They left at midnight aboard the borrowed Learjet from Frank Sinatra named Christina. And by 10 a.m. in the morning, they were a married couple. They spent a couple of hours enjoying themselves with their friends at a reception after a press conference. And now they're on the way back to Palm Springs. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you. Happy coffee. And we're going to get started right after this song that tells the story of that trip on the Christina to Las Vegas and talks about Red, why he didn't make it to the reception. Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you.
The bullhorn heart over stucco walls where the flashbulbs start. Joni's got curlers, Joe's got the cash, Danny K's in the cockpit, burning jet fuel fast. Sinatra's bird, she's purring like a prayer. Christina's wings got the desert air. Red's not on the list, he's pacing the floor, while the collar's got the press in a ballroom wall. Roller's got a sin and a Polaroid grin, but the ring's in a case with the diamonds grinning in. $15 for a license and a brother got burned by the wedding machine. Palm Springs whispers, Bland's got the seat, but the real show's hidden in a velvet beat. Mama's flown in, Daddy's eyes are wide, while the Memphis boys are split on the right. Livich opens up his velvet chest, bullhead complaints, diamonds in the west. But Red's got a wound that won't sit still. He's shouting down love from the windowsill. Color's got a script and a phantom plan. He's dealing out silence with a sleight of hand. You got too many, he says with a grin. Let go of the love if you want to win. Blinded by the flight, wrapped up like the bow in the Vegas night. Blinded by the flight, when the heartbreak hits you in the morning light. Oh, we were flying on a secret stream to a chapel dream, but the brother got burned by the wedding machine. Christina's wheels kissed the tarmac clean, and the ring was slipped before the world had seen. But love, oh love, it don't run on time. It breaks in the silence, not the headline.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear the echoes of a Palm Springs honeymoon. So Elvis and Priscilla have left the reception. They've changed clothes and flown back to Palm Springs. And what Albert Goldman says, and remember that Albert, he didn't like Elvis very much. He said rushing back to Palm Springs that night Elvis was installed with his bride in a rented house. So Albert kind of makes it sound like maybe they rented a house for the night or the month or the week in order to have this honeymoon, but in fact, Elvis had been leasing this house. Rich people don't rent, they lease. He had been leasing this house since 1966, so the year before. This was the house where they had the party the night before, and we saw some pictures of it. And here we can see Elvis carrying Priscilla across this threshold. And you might wonder if they got back to Palm Springs and they were the first to enter the house and he carries her across the threshold, who's taking this picture? Well, Jerry Schilling says when Elvis carried Priscilla across the threshold of their new Palm Springs home, the so-called honeymoon house, the first thing Priscilla saw on the other side of that threshold was us. Me and Sandy, Joe and Joni, and a couple of others. So I don't know if Sandy and Jerry and Joe and Joni and those couple of others had all come back on the Learjet with Elvis, or if they'd come back on the other jet that Red West and Vernon and Dee and Marty Lacker were on. Because they all came back on another jet and Marty Lacker was carrying all the stuff that was left over, like the cake and the flowers and the liquor from the party. And then Marty had told us that once they get back to the house, everybody takes off and they kind of go their own separate ways. Now, what house are we talking about? Well, it's this one. Elvis's Palm Springs honeymoon hideaway. Wasn't really the honeymoon house when he first leased it, but that's what it's known as today. Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you. And I think that this is a beautiful house. I mean, it's stunning when you look at it. Absolutely nothing like Graceland. And it's got the mountains in the background. It's got all the palm trees. It's got the unique architecture. It's got that giant window that's jutting out in front. And right behind that window in that room, that's where those pictures were from that party that we saw. And you can see that the rock, it's extended not only through the living room, but all outside of the house as well. Like this rock wall. I guess they're all rock walls. But these rock walls, they're an integral part of the architecture of this house. And Marion says that the honeymoon house is awesome. But pretty stunning. Now I've got a picture of the interior. And this is that room right behind the window. You can see it's got a fireplace in the center of the room. The big circular fireplace, open all the way around. Now, how often would you use a fireplace in California? I have no idea. I would think never. To the point that you wouldn't even put one in, but what do I know about architecture? You can also see that there are no angles, at least that we can see. Everything is round. It's all circular, not perfect circles, but organic. It's very organic. This is not exactly what it would have looked like when Elvis and Priscilla were there, but it's very, very close. And you can see this giant, it's obviously a custom made couch to go all the way around the curve of that wall. And then here's a picture of the back of the house. You were out at the swimming pool, and you can see the swimming pool's not exactly square. It's an odd shape, but it's not. I can't even name the shape. I guess it's a pentagon, but it's not proportional like we would think of a pentagon most times. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Joe Esposito, he says that Elvis and Priscilla changed their clothes, and we all flew back to Palm Springs where we enjoyed a group honeymoon for 3 or 4 days, beginning that night with a wonderful home-cooked wedding dinner. Elvis had gone out to the garden to pluck a rose for Priscilla, which he set next to her place on the table. So at some point during this night, there's going to be a wonderful home-cooked meal. I guess Marty didn't have any because he says he took off to go to a rented house with some other guys, a couple of other guys, and that everyone else had left. But apparently Joe's still here. I'm kind of guessing that Jerry Schilling and Sandy are still here, and they're having a wonderful home-cooked dinner. We don't know who cooked it or what it was, but Joe still remembers that he likes it. And Priscilla Presley says, we hadn't slept for nearly 48 hours. It was still daylight, and the sun shone brightly through our bedroom windows as Elvis carefully placed me in the middle of our king-size bed. Gently, his lips touched mine. Then he looked deeply into my eyes. My wife, he said softly as he drew me close. I love you, Scylla, he murmured, covering my body with his. So Jerry Schilling, Joe Esposito, their wives, maybe some other people. Maybe this is why some of them left. Marty didn't mention this, but apparently Elvis has taken Priscilla upstairs. Or at least to the bedroom. I think she had said something about upstairs, so I'm not sure what the proportions of this house are, or it kind of looks one story when you look at it, but maybe it did look like maybe there was a story beneath it, and it's obviously on a hill, so there could be multiple levels. But wherever this bedroom is, he's taken her to it, and it's still got sun coming in, and they're having a romantic interlude, but these other people are wandering around the house, and somebody's cooking dinner. And David Stanley says, later that night when we were at home, and when David says at home, he means Dolan Drive, next to Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, because he's not at Palm Springs. We've already heard from David, and we know that the housekeeper told him that Elvis got married, that he did not know in advance it was going to happen. And David says later that night when we were at home, Dee and Elvis called, and we talked to them and Priscilla, and that's how we found out that Elvis and Priscilla were married on May 1st, 1967. So the housekeeper had told them, but his mother and Elvis called to confirm. Now, I do find it odd that in his book, David refers to his mother by her first name. And it's not even truly her first name, it's her It's the name I think that they all call her. D. I just feel like even in the book he would call her my mother or my mom, but he calls her D. Elvis, he's saying talk to him personally, and Priscilla, and that's how they found out they were married. So I wonder if Elvis and Priscilla also talked to Billy and Ricky. Now up on the screen, I've pulled up a Harry Levitch. He's the jeweler in Memphis, the guy who brought the wedding rings and a suitcase full of other jewelry to the wedding, from which Elvis bought some things. And of course, he paid for well, I don't think he paid for it right there, but he received his custom made to his specifications wedding ring that we got to see. And Luann says that that the Palm Springs Elvis house has been popping up on her phone for sale recently. And Colleen says that it's very California. And Luann says that that house established some of the modern houses of today. Yeah, I want to say Frank Lloyd Wright was the architect, but don't quote me on that. I haven't really researched the house at all yet. Just found a couple of pictures to help us along through this part of the story. But I do know that it still is seen as a wonderful piece of California architecture. Now, on this receipt, you can see that it says Mr. Elvis Presley, wedding gifts, and it's dated August 2nd. So this is the next day. My guess is that Harry Levitch flew home, if not that day, May 1st, then on May 2nd. And then this was probably some of the stuff that he sold from the suitcase, and then he created the receipt for it. And we had seen that on some of the others. There were receipts, but he crossed things out. So maybe this was part of tidying all that up, or maybe he sold these pieces and he had not had receipts ready at that moment in time because Elvis was spontaneous about buying them. And he's just making up the receipt on the back end in order to be able to bill Verdon properly. But you can see that it says Bull 14 karat gold diamond eye set, I think is what it's saying. Cufflinks and tie tack, $200. And he's actually sold it for $170. So I think he's indicating that he's given Elvis a $30 discount, which in that day would have been about worth about 10 times as much today. So that'd be like a $300 discount. It's pretty fair. Then it says horseshoe cufflinks and tie bar, 14 karat gold set, $150. But he's charged Elvis $125 for it. Again, giving him a significant discount. And then it says ring for Miss Blue. And I'm assuming that's a ring for Priscilla's sister, who was the maid of honor. It's $225. And he's given it to Elvis, or sold it to Elvis, for $187.50. And so I got no idea where this receipt goes or how it eventually gets paid, but my guess is it's created in Memphis and taken directly to Graceland. And then when Vernon returns, part of his business will be to pay this. And Red West says, I was sullen for a few days, and I called Charlie Hodge at the hotel where they were all staying. So I'm guessing that Charlie is not in the honeymoon house, that there is probably the least number of people that have ever been around Elvis at this moment in the house, because it is his honeymoon, and I think they're trying to get some amount of time alone. But even then, I think there's still people at the house. But Red says that Charlie Hodge is staying at a hotel with some of the other guys. So he's probably got a room over there by himself. And I had seen something the other day, so this is coming out of my memory. It's not something I've researched, but somebody who had known Charlie was saying that the only time he didn't have a room in their house was around this period, right after they had gotten married. And that in California, Elvis had bought or rented Charlie a apartment right down the street. And therefore he was able to come and go to the apartment, and that he was very proud of having that apartment. I saw that in an interview the other day. I can't remember exactly who said it, but I had thought that Charlie had always been with Elvis in all of his houses, but I think there was a short period here when there was an attempt to get more privacy at the very beginning of this marriage. That went on probably for maybe a year. And Red says Charlie had joined up with Elvis by now. And I'm on the phone saying, who organized the damn thing that went on? So Charlie is out at this hotel, but he's back in California at a hotel, but near Elvis. It's probably been over there at the house, and now he's back at the hotel. Elvis and Priscilla are there in the house, as close to alone as they're going to get. And Red West is calling Charlie, and he's demanding, who organized me not being at the reception or at the ceremony? Who is it that said Red and the others can't come to the ceremony? And when he says organized, he means planned. This is something that has been planned against him. This wasn't by happenstance. It wasn't, we got there and the room wasn't big enough. This was planned. Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you. And Red says, anyway, Charlie don't know nothing, but Elvis is sitting there while I'm talking. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I don't think Elvis is over at this hotel. And Red clearly said, I called Charlie at the hotel where they were all staying. But if Elvis is sitting there, he's got to be calling the house, and Charlie's got to be at the house. But Red says, anyway, Charlie don't know nothing, but Elvis is sitting there while I'm talking, and he gets on the phone. Elvis says, what the heck's going on, boy? He starts in like that, and I yell back at him, what the heck do you mean, boy? We were at each other, and after a while we both calmed down, and we agreed to cool it and talk again later. So Red's saying that he's talking to Charlie, and when he says talking, it sounds like he's interrogating Charlie, and I'm guessing he's probably loud about it and probably angry. And Elvis gets wind that he's on the phone, probably can hear him, and he takes the phone and he says he wants to know what's going on. He's very forceful about asking it. He's not happy. Probably doesn't like the fact Charlie's getting yelled at. But Red sees it as Elvis starting in like that. which I guess means Elvis starting like he's the boss, it's his day, Red had left, thinks, I don't know. Red is already like spoiling for a fight. And so Elvis is angry about this as well. And the very first thing that Elvis says, Red takes it the very worst way possible. And Red says, I yell back at him. And he curses at Elvis and even puts these curses in his book. Now, why do they got to put the curses in the book? I don't know, but did he really say that? Well, he says he did. And so he basically wants to know what Elvis means. It's kind of a phrase that's similar, why are you looking at me like that? Or something like that, right? It's antagonistic. And then he says they are both yelling at, we're both at each other. That means they're yelling at each other. They're screaming and yelling at each other on the phone. They're angry. They're having it out. They're saying things they probably are going to regret later. And then Red says, after a while, we both calmed down. We agreed to cool it and talk again later. I believe that is code for we both hung up on each other. Somebody hung up and then the other one hung up, because that's how these things go. Calmed down and agreed to cool it, talk again. That doesn't sound like what's going on in this conversation. Doesn't sound like how the conversation started. I'm going to guess it's not how it ended. So I believe this was a very difficult conversation for these two, and this did not clear the air. Now, in August of 1973, several years into the future, Priscilla gives her very first interview ever, or at least that's what they say it is. That's what they bill it as. Her very first interview to the press ever. Now, we just saw her at a press conference and she had nothing to say. She let Elvis do all the talking. But in August of 1973, Elvis and Priscilla are no longer together. And Priscilla is giving her first interview to the press. It's to the Ladies' Home Journal. And she talks about the honeymoon a little bit. And here's what she says. Priscilla says, after a 2-month honeymoon in Palm Springs, California. Well, this is what the Ladies' Home Journal says. After a 2-month honeymoon in Palm Springs, California, the couple returned to Elvis's $400,000 mansion in the Truesdale Estates. Presley had just finished the movie Double Trouble and was to start another film on location. So, a very few years after the events that we're talking about today, May 1st and May 2nd, 1967, perhaps all the way through the end of May or even the end of June, the Ladies' Home Journal, after talking to Priscilla, has reported that they have a 2-month honeymoon in Palm Springs. Well, that's incorrect. It's not nearly 2 months. It's a few days. It's been a few days in Palm Springs. The whole honeymoon altogether, I don't think is going to last 2 months when we outline the whole thing. And then it says that the couple returned to Elvis's $400,000 mansion in the Truesdale Estates. Well, he doesn't have that mansion yet. They don't buy it till the end of the year. So again, this is a misstatement of facts. There is a mansion. It is in the Truesdale Estates. This ain't it. We're not there yet. And then it says Presley had just finished the movie Double Trouble. Well, that's not true either. He just finished the movie Clam Bake. So the Ladies' Home Journal in August of 1973, I'm going to doubt that they got all of these facts from Priscilla, but whoever they did get the facts from, they were very poor fact checkers. And that's probably true of all the magazines of this era, all the newspapers. This is the Ladies' Home Journal. This is a fairly respected magazine. They can't get 3 facts in a row right in the same paragraph, in the same article, about something that is very recent. 1967 is less than a decade before. And they're talking to somebody who was right there. But let's move on. According to Billy Smith, Elvis, Priscilla, and some others. So perhaps Billy and Joe were one of those couples that had the home-cooked dinner on the night that they returned for the first night of the honeymoon in Palm Springs. Because he's there. Billy and Joe are there. Although I think they're staying in a hotel. And I do not know if they have Danny and Joey with them. But according to Billy, Elvis, Priscilla, and some others spent some of this time riding horses through the mountains in the area. So the horses have come into the story again. This wasn't the only, or Circle G was not the only place, and Graceland was not the only place where Elvis is enjoying the horses. He's also enjoying the horses here in California, riding them through mountains, which he doesn't have available in Mississippi or his area of Tennessee, really. So this would be something a little different on the horses. And all the people that are with him at this moment, they're all in love with horses right now because they've been spending a lot of time on horses ever since January. So this is roughly the 5th month that they've all been riding horses, and they're all loving it. And Red West says, I did a stint working stunts on Bob Conrad's television show, The Wild Wild West. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Wild Wild West. Will Smith did a remake movie in the, I want to say, really late 90s, early 2000s. Either right before, right after, or during the Men in Black thing that he was doing. All that series of movies. It wasn't the most popular movie in the world, but it's a mix of Western and steampunk. And that's what it was even in the 1960s, before the term steampunk had ever even been invented. They were already doing the show, and it was very popular. And Red shows up as a villain a few times and does some stunt work. And Marion says those huge amount of wrong facts is really disappointing and confusing. I am happy that you go through all the information with us. I'm glad you said that, Marion, and that you find value in what I'm bringing to you. I think that what happens on a lot of other channels is that they read to you from a single source, and they don't really know anything about the time period or anything that goes around the source. So there's an intense amount of belief that's given to all these statements that come from these sources. But, we just looked at this very well-respected magazine, and these facts are just simply wrong. They're just wrong. And so I don't think they did that purposely to fool anyone. I think it's just sloppy. And there's a massive amount of sloppiness that goes on like this. And we see that even in Sonny West's book, his own book, where he hired a guy to help him with this, that he says, I'm off filming the Hellcats in January, and I come back, and then he says, I'm off filming the Hellcats in May, and I miss the wedding. Well, he wasn't filming it both times, because it wasn't that kind of movie. It didn't take that long. There's all kinds of errors like that, and those are, some people would see those as inconsequential. But when you try to then map them into the timeline, the actual chronology of these events, it becomes impossible because their recollections were wrong. And it also means the guy that helped him never timelined anything. So he has no idea what order stuff was actually supposed to happen in. And that means he probably didn't verify it against much other stuff. But let's say you had verified it and you came to this article from the Ladies' Home Journal and you didn't happen to know that, we just went through this. So I know he didn't just film Double Trouble. We know, because we saw him film Clam Bake, that it was Clam Bake and that Double Trouble came out at that moment. So he did get married right after Double Trouble came out. So the facts are almost there. They're almost right. But they're maddeningly off just a little bit. Just enough to make it completely wrong. And on May 4th, 1967, Elvis and Priscilla flew from Palm Springs to Memphis, Tennessee. So they get married on the 1st. They have a very short honeymoon in Palm Springs the night of the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. And on the 4th, they fly back to Palm Springs. Now, I don't know what time of the day, but whenever they went riding on horses in the mountains, it was basically those 2 days, I'm thinking. The 2nd and the 3rd, or maybe just one of those days. Now, looking back on it, I think Billy Smith's memory makes it much longer than it was. But I also saw a wonderful clip of Billy talking to his wife, Jo, about the Circle G. And she says something like, we lived in a trailer there for 2 or 3 years. And he looks at her and he says, what? She says, we lived in this trailer on the Circle G for 2 or 3 years. And he says, wife, we lived there like 8 months. She says, well, it seemed like it was 2 or 3 years. And that is what it seemed like to her. It seemed like 2 or 3 years because that's the way our memory works. So when Billy Smith says they spent this honeymoon and they're doing all this horse riding, well, it's only a couple of days. And then they fly back to Palm Springs. Well, we do know what time. Elvis and Priscilla, according to Alana Nash, flew from Palm Springs to Memphis, arriving around 6 a.m. So they must have left pretty early in the morning, I'm thinking, over in Palm Springs to get to Memphis by 6 a.m. And I'm assuming it's 6 a.m. local time in Memphis. And then after a quick stop at Graceland, they go on to the Circle G to continue their honeymoon. I don't think Alana's got that part of it quite right. I think they spend significantly more time at Graceland, like the rest of the day and maybe the next day. But let's see what some other people say. Priscilla Presley says, within a few days, we were in Memphis, where Dee Presley held a small wedding shower for me. So they get back on the 4th, and I don't know what day the wedding shower is. I believe we saw a picture of it before, and I may have it. Oh, well, this is Priscilla and Elvis in Palm Springs on that honeymoon. This is the 2nd or the 3rd. Priscilla's carrying a pretty big bag. But maybe they're getting ready to go horse riding and that's like a picnic lunch or something. Like, I don't know. Or maybe they're getting ready. They can't be getting ready to leave to get on the plane to Memphis because it had to have been dark if they arrived in Memphis at 6 a.m. You can see Elvis is wearing a white button-down shirt that just looks like a normal white shirt except for the cuffs. He's definitely wearing cufflinks. So it's an expensive white shirt. And he's also got on yellow pants. And then you can see that he's wearing some kind of black shoes, which have a little buckle on them. And I want to say that they're suede black shoes that are 3/4 high. The ones that Billy Smith described, that he tried to shine up to look like they were patent leather shoes. Now, when we saw Elvis in his tux, we could see some shoes. I don't think these were them. They might have been. But I think that these, because Billy really made a point of talking about the little buckle. And you could see the little buckle on these shoes. I think these are those shoes Billy was talking about. And I wouldn't have noticed them in this picture if Billy hadn't told that story. You can see that Priscilla's wearing some green shoes that match her green outfit. That also has some blue in it. I think her hair looks significantly different than it did on the day of the wedding, but that could just be me. And I think Elvis looks kind of tired in this picture. Priscilla looks happy, but Elvis looks tired. Here's another picture from that same moment, really. And you can see Elvis is looking still tired. Now he has a smile on his face now, but he's still looking tired to me. And you cannot see his shoes. Still at the gates of his leased house. And here we've got yet another receipt from Harry Levitch. Vernon must have loved Harry, because look at all these receipts that Harry provides. And this is another one from May 2nd, 1967. And it also says Elvis Presley wedding gifts. And this one says 14 karat gold wedding something for $40. I can't read it. The second one says 14 karat gold men's diamond wedding ring, $140. I'm wondering if that's that horseshoe ring that he had on, but it doesn't say horseshoe. Or it might have been a ring he just bought somebody to wear at the wedding. And then it says platinum double guard ring, $1,400. So you know what I think this is? I think that the earlier receipts that we saw that had the lines crossed out, because they also, one of them had this platinum double band, which is Elvis's wedding ring for the $1,400. And then he's gone back to Memphis and he's rewritten all the receipts so that they don't show any of the stuff that he had crossed out. And I think it may be possible he left a copy of the crossed out sheet with Vernon. And then he sends this, and then Vernon can match it all up and say, yep, we're only getting charged for what we did. And then he's got a nice clean record. And then also Harry has a clean record for his own records. That's my guess. Keeps all his inventory straight. And Marion says that these are Billy's shoes. Elvis must have loved them. He otherwise would have got rid of them, I think. Well, I think he really did love them, because Billy seemed to remember that he had bought them for Elvis and that Elvis had liked them. It's just that when Elvis went to put them on at the wedding, these aren't my wedding shoes, right? And I can see how he could be disappointed with that, but still love the shoes overall. And this is that picture from the wedding shower. And you can see that Priscilla has her hair different. And that's what kept throwing me in these pictures. She's doing her makeup slightly different as well. and her hair is different. She just didn't appear to be the same as in that series of pictures from the party to the wedding to Palm Springs. And here we can see Dee, and that Dee's hair is also different than what it was in the wedding. I think it's a little shorter on top. It was extremely tall at the wedding, and it's come down a little bit, although it's still very tall. And this is an example of a thank you note. Now, if we remember way back into the beginning of the wedding episodes, Joni Esposito reminded Priscilla to make sure that she got some custom thank you notes and stationery. This is the image I have for this note. I don't know if it's been changed from the original image and the writing has been pulled off and then like put onto a background so that it is more readable or something, or if it's been cropped in such a way that you can't see any of the stationery, but it looks like there's no stationery that this was written on, like it was written on a plain piece of paper, or something very close to it. And it comes from Mr. and Mrs. Elvis Presley at Graceland. And it says, "Dear Phyllis." And it looks to me like this was a photocopied handwritten form. You hand wrote it, but you didn't put the name in. And then you went back and you wrote the name in. And whoever wrote Phyllis has a completely different handwriting than whoever wrote the note. And the note says at the bottom, "Sincerely, Priscilla and Elvis Presley." Although I'm not sure this is, I mean, it's definitely not Elvis's handwriting. I don't know if it's Priscilla's. And I don't know whose handwriting the Phyllis is in. I kind of think Phyllis is Priscilla's handwriting. And the other is a secretary, but I just don't know. But it says, "Dear Phyllis, we received your wedding card and would like to thank you. It was it was appreciated." Duly appreciated? It's got a P. I'm blanking. I can't figure out this word. But it was appreciated. "We are very happy at the wonderful way our wedding was received. Thank you again, and may your days be as happy as ours. Sincerely, Priscilla and Elvis Presley." So this mentions a card that was received. And perhaps what this is a form letter that went back to people who sent cards but didn't actually come to a reception. These are fans. These aren't people that were invited to a reception or gave a gift, but they did send cards to thank Elvis. Again, I don't know. I just happen to have this example. And Marion says that yes, Elvis did look very tired. I think he did too. George Klein says, "After the wedding, a small group of us spent a few days back in Palm Springs with the newlyweds. And then it was back to Memphis, where a lot of time was again spent on the Circle G." So it sounds like George flew back and arrived in Memphis at 6 a.m. on the 4th with the others. Because he belongs in Memphis. That's where he lives. And he's got a job in Memphis, so he's got to get back there sooner or later. But it does sound like he got to spend a few days with Elvis. And on screen, we can see a statement from the Aladdin Hotel, but it's really too small to make out. So I'm going to work on that image, and we're going to look at it in the next episode. But let's hear from Albert Goldman. He said the best Elvis and Priscilla could do by way of having a honeymoon was to go back to the ranch, where they holed up for a week or so with Lamar. Hi, chillin' in Canada. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. So Albert says best they could do was go back to the ranch, and Lamar was there. Now, Lamar wasn't at the wedding because he was not in California. He was doing something else. But apparently he will be on the ranch when they get back. But Albert doesn't mention that they spent any time in Palm Springs. And he says the best that these guys could do for a honeymoon was to go back to this ranch. Well, it's a $500,000 ranch that Elvis just bought. Like, in their money from those days, it was $430,000 plus everything he put on it. So we're talking well over $500,000. Seems like a pretty happy place to go if you needed to go to a honeymoon. I guess Albert thinks it's just a big patch of grass or something and has no idea what's really going on there. But I doubt that Albert ever had a place like the Circle G to go to in his whole life. So I just find it so amusing that he tries so hard to cut down Elvis at every opportunity that he can. And he tries to back that up by saying, well, Lamar was there, so what I'm saying is true. It's not really true. It's just a bad attitude on Albert's part about it. Now, the day after they get back on May the 5th, Peter Guralnick says that's the day that Elvis and Priscilla left Graceland to stay at the Circle G Ranch. So they came back at 6 a.m. in the morning on the 4th, probably spent a full day of doing stuff. I don't know when that wedding or the shower was that Priscilla was at that Dee threw her. That's probably somewhere in that week after they get back. I don't know if it's the 4th. But then on the 5th, they go to the Circle G and begin spending their nights there, according to Peter. And Jerry Schilling says, when the beautiful couple headed off for their real honeymoon getaway, we were all right there with them at the Circle G Ranch. So Jerry has, and his wife, they've been with them through this whole journey, really. And so now they're there at the Circle G Ranch. They were in Palm Springs. They were at Las Vegas for the wedding. And that brings us really to the end of everything that I've got prepared for us to look at today. And when we get back in the next episode, we're actually going to be at the Circle G again. And we're going to spend some time there because that's where they're going to have a honeymoon. And there's going to be fun things happen. And there's going to be some drama. And we're going to get into that on the next episode. But until we go there, I'm going to leave you guys with a song. And this one's going to be Threads and Dreams, because George Klein was in this episode. And now George Klein is back in Memphis, and he is reunited with his brand new 1967 Cadillac convertible that Elvis gave him just a few months ago for Christmas. And Elvis took his old car, the 1966 Chevrolet convertible, and gave it to Gary Pepper. And this song is Threads and Dream. And you all keep on taking care of business.
He wore a yellow shirt, black pants in the sun, rode horses through silence, then golf carts for fun. A ranch just 10 miles from the mansion's bright gate, where the myth met the morning and time learned to wait. George fixed the brickwork, the pipes in the ground, lit deep on shirt where no spotlight was found. Donna kept diaries, snapshots ahead of a father who labored, of a myth made by men. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place to be still when the world spun around. In the hands of the choir, in the stitch of a scene, he carried the weight of a half-finished dream. The holster was worn, the leather was cracked, BP etched in thread, no glory attacked. Mike shaped the saddle, the belt and the law, so Elvis could ride through a myth he adored. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place singing still, that courage spun out. In the hang out the fight, the mistakes on the sea, we drained the weight of the hearts and his teeth. Snowstorms in March to fairgrounds at night. He chased peace in motion and shadow and light. And Priscilla saw him silhouette aglow, breathing in twilight, steady and slow. He didn't ask for gold,